Hi everyone, welcome and good afternoon. My name is Lauren Artilles, and on behalf of Harvard Bookstore, I'm so pleased to introduce this virtual event with TALIA HIBBERT, VANESSA RILEY, FARRAH ROCHON, and Kennedy Ryan, celebrating Bookstore Romance Day and discussing their work, moderated by CHRISTINA Tucker. I hope you're all well and safe. Thank you so much for joining us virtually today. Through virtual events like today's, Harvard Bookstore continues to bring authors and their work to our community and our new digital community during these challenging times. We're hosting 5 events a week right here on our Zoom, and just like always, our event schedule will appear on our website at harvard.com, and you can sign up for our email newsletter for more updates. This afternoon's discussion will conclude with some time for your questions. So if you have a question for our speakers at any time during the talk today, click on the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get through as many as time allows. In the chat, I'll be posting a link to purchase our speakers' most recent books on harvard.com, as well as a link to donate in support of this series and our store. Your purchases and financial contributions make events like today's possible and help ensure the future of a landmark independent bookstore. So thank you for showing up and tuning in support of our authors and the incredible staff of booksellers at Harvard Bookstore. We sincerely appreciate your support now and always. And finally, as you may have experienced in virtual gatherings these last several months, technical issues may arise. If they do, we'll do our best to resolve them as quickly as possible. So thank you for your patience and understanding. And now I'm honored to introduce today's speakers. TALIA HIBBERT is a USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestselling author whose books include Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and her most recent book, Take a Hint, Danny Brown. She writes sexy, diverse romance because she believes that people of marginalized identities need honest and positive representation. VANESSA RILEY is an award-winning author of Regency and historical romances featuring dazzling multicultural communities and powerful persons of color. Her new book, A Duke, the Lady, and a Baby, is a Publishers Weekly Summer Reads 2020 editor's pick. FARRAH ROCHON is the USA Today bestselling author of the award-winning Holmes Brothers series and a Louisiana native. Her new book, The Boyfriend Project, has been featured in Cosmopolitan, NPR, OprahMag.com, and more. Kennedy Ryan is a Rita Award winner and best-selling author who writes about women from all walks of life in stories that center their desires and put them in charge of their own destinies. She's the co-founder of Lift for Autism, an annual charitable book auction, and her most recent book is Queen Move. CHRISTINA Tucker is one half of the Unfriendly Black Hotties, a podcast about the intersection of race, gender, and sexuality in higher education, pop culture, and politics. She's also a rotating 4th chair on NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour, as well as the social media manager for the Food for Thought podcast. Today, we are so excited to be celebrating the 2nd annual Bookstore Romance Day, albeit a bit belatedly, and joining indie stores across the country in uplifting the vibrant, diverse, passionate community of romance and erotica authors and readers, and honoring the importance and significance of romance in the wider literary landscape. Our authors will be speaking about their work and their experiences as part of the romance community, moderated by CHRISTINA, and I'm so delighted to turn things over to them. So the digital podium is yours, everyone.
Hello.
Hello, hello, my friends and pals. I want to thank everyone for joining us. This is a really nice crowd size. I'm really thrilled that we're really pulling in the numbers here, team. I'm going to let you guys tell us a little bit about your newest books and also why romance? Why did you get started in the genre? What brought you to it? Let's start with Kennedy.
Okay. I'll first talk a little bit, I'll flip the question and start with why romance.
Flip it as however feels fit for all of you.
I'm going to flip it.
You wild.
And talk a little bit about why romance and how I got started with romance. First of all, I'm a lifelong romance reader, voraciously so. I started really young, like 7th grade. And at that point, I'm in my 40s. So if you're reading romance in the 7th grade and you're in your 40s, that's like the 80s. So that's like the heyday of like Woodowitz and, the bodice rippers, and just seeing the evolution of romance and how it's come so far and doing so many things it wasn't doing then. I definitely wasn't seeing myself as a Black woman depicted in those stories. And so just being on this panel today with women who are writing that and who are revolutionizing romance is really special. I hope my mom's not watching. She may be, because I used to smuggle romance novels into our house and stuff mattress. And I had a closet full that she didn't know about. So
Well, that's kind of just part of it, I think.
have my romance. And for me, that how voracious those stories make me feel, going on a journey that way, but being guaranteed the safety of a happily ever after was something that appealed to me. And it's kind of the same reading experience I want to create for my readers. My latest book is called Queen Move. It is politics and family drama and second chance, and a couple who literally have the same birthday, kind of fated, know each other from the cradle all the way up until their 40s when they get their second chance. So it's kind of, if you like the show Scandal, and she is she and her best friend start an organization that empowers and puts, they're kingmakers. So they put people in office who champion marginalized groups. And so they're white hatters, gladiators, if that Scandal reference means anything to anybody. So it's called Queen Move.
Yay, we love that. I'm going to just go down the list of folks I have. And next is Vanessa. Tell us a little bit about why romance and your latest book.
Why romance? Because I think at this present time, well, let me take you back. I first got into romance, I think it was Jude Devereaux, when my parents' marriage was imploding. And I needed something to bridge the gap, to bring peace and order, and to restore this idea of undying love, that sooner or later, no matter what happens, you're able to work it out and it's going to happen. And I saw it dissolving in front of me, and I needed something to reach for, and I reached for romance books. And I saw this really happy world where, they went through all kind of things, and mine were more the gothic ones, right? So it was like a woman was kidnapped.
Yeah.
There were wars and things like this, and then love conquered all, sword play and all this sort of stuff. But as I continue to read it, I happened upon Beverly Jenkins, and because I'm a history buff, so it's always for me been historical romance. I make exceptions, especially for my lovely friends here. I love all you guys. But my proclivity is going to be a historical romance, and I wasn't seeing myself. And I'm so fortunate that I'm now able to craft stories that I hope give light and inspiration to people who look like me, people who don't look like me, but want to see diversity in historical romance and seeing how love survives across class barriers, across race barriers, even across able barriers. My latest book, A Duke, the Lady and a Baby, talks about a secret society of widows who have bonded together in order to restore women to their rightful places. In this particular time frame in the Regency, once you said I do, you have given up so many rights, your rights to property, the rights to how your child is going to be raised, so many different things. So it's a very big decision for a woman. And when things go wrong, things can go horribly wrong. And so the widow's grace is meant to restore people. My heroine is a West Indian heiress from the colony of Demerara, and she married an Englishman. Things didn't quite go well. She worked very hard to try and fit in and be the wife that he wanted, but she wasn't what he needed, and he died. And the evil uncle, because there's always an evil uncle in my Gothic tales, right?
Yeah, has to be.
has put her into Bedlam in order to control the money, because she has a son, and because of the patriarchal system, the firstborn male heir gets everything. So he who controls the baby controls the world. And Patience and the Widow's Grace are railing against the patriarchy to get her child back. Unfortunately, or fortunately, there is a wonderful hero, the Duke of Repington, who's actually the true guardian for this young man. He stands in her way because he wants to make sure this child is raised properly and in order, and just become a really good citizen in the world of London. So they butt heads, and we'll have to see what happens in A Duke, the Lady and a Baby.
We love that. You got to have them button heads. That's how it all gets started. Next up, let's do Talia.
Oh, I was woefully unprepared for that, even though I should have been prepared.
That's fine. That's fine. I believe in you.
So I've been reading romance since a really young age, like all of us. One thing I've noticed is that we all seem to start reading at a highly inappropriate age, but clearly it hasn't done harm.
Who's to say what's appropriate, really?
Exactly. So yeah, I just fell in love with romance the moment I picked up my first one, which was Splendid by Julia Quinn. And like that safety net of the happy ever after, like Kennedy said, it was so amazing for me, especially because I think I have quite an anxious personality type. And as a teenager, that was obviously exacerbated by 10 because everything is worse when you're a teenager. So being able to read these books where everything was lovely and safe, and no matter what drama happened, I knew it would all work out. I think that is why I fell in love with romance, and I have just never fallen out with it. So my latest book, Take a Hint, Danny Brown, is, I have it here, so it looks like this. It's a rom-com rammed full of tropes, you know, opposites attract, workplace romance, friends to lovers, but the big one is fake relationship. The heroine, Danny, is an academic who doesn't believe in love, doesn't believe that it's for her, and she has kind of a crush on the security guard at her workplace called Zaf. And then there's like a workplace mishap and he rescues her, they get caught on camera and they go viral. And so in order to ride that wave and get some publicity for Zaf's charity, they decide to fake a relationship. Now Zaf, unlike Danny, is a hopeless romantic. He is super anxious and he loves romance novels for that reason. So maybe there's a little bit of me there.
I see what you did there.
So, you know, they're faking this relationship and Zaf is loving it from the start. Danny is, this is great, but it can't be real because romance isn't real. But little does she know, she is actually the heroine of a romance novel. So yes, it is. And yeah, it's just all about them coming together and figuring out each other, but also figuring out how to love themselves fully.
We love that. And we are going to talk about tropes. Don't you worry, friends. First up, next up, Farrah, tell us a little bit about how you got into romance and your latest book.
Well, I am just slightly different from everyone else. I actually did start reading romance around that same age, maybe 12 or 13. It was my aunt's. She had a bunch of Harlequins, you know, and I would sneak them. And then my sister gave me my first big book, which was Laurel Spencer's Separate Beds. And I was like 13 years old. And I read that, I fell in love with it. But then when I got to college and grad school, I had to read the serious books. I hate to admit that I'm that person, but I stopped reading romance and I, you know, had to read the Oprah books that depressed me the whole time. I thought if I wasn't depressed, I wasn't reading the right kind of books. But then my sister, once again, she gave me a book by Judith McNaught, and that was it for me.
Which one?
Yeah, we got to talk which one.
The first one she gave me was actually Double Standards, which was one of her, you know, it's one of her lesser known. But I can tell you right now, I've got like 100 copies of her book. She only has like 12. And I have so many copies that I never want to run out. Paradise and Whitney, My Love, or I can recite them verbatim. I'll just say that. That once she gave me those books, I, like Talia said, I never looked back. That was it for me. And I started, when I started writing, I actually was writing one of the serious books and I hated it. And it wasn't until a friend of mine, when she found out I was writing, she automatically assumed it was a romance. And I said, no, but that's what I read. So why not write it?
Yeah.
And I wrote the first romance and I had so much fun. It's like, wow, it can actually be fun doing this if you actually write what you like. So yeah, again, I have this little weird path because I'm me. My book, my latest book, The Boyfriend Project, it's actually kind of deviates too from what I've done in the past because it's more romantic women's fiction is what I call it, because it's a lot, just as much about the friendship between these three women who meet because of a bad date gone viral. Basically, my heroine, Samaya, you know, she has this checklist of everything that she's been looking for. She's got the job of her, you know, dreams, the car of her dreams, the condo in downtown Austin. All she's missing is a man, because society has told her that's what she needs to complete herself. So she's dating this guy that she has decided is not Mr. Right, but Mr. Right enough for her. And as she's getting ready for her date, her sister starts to relate this live tweet that's going on, and Samaya realizes that, hey, this date that this woman is on is kind of like the date I went on with my boyfriend. And that's when she, you know, she discovers that, yeah, he's dating this girl, and then there's another girl, and they all they confront him at the restaurant. It goes viral because everything these days goes viral. And these women, they form this instant friendship. So the Boyfriend Project is about them actually working together on things that all three of them have decided, like projects that they wanted to work on, that they've put on the side because, you know, they were pursuing a guy. But it's a romance also, so of course, like, you know, hot guy comes in and kind of messes things up for Samaya, but that's the gist.
You gotta have it all. Yeah, you gotta have a little bit of everything.
She does. She gets it all.
Absolutely. Well, as I mentioned, we're definitely going to talk about tropes. So these are my questions for you all on tropes. What is your favorite trope to write? And what is a trope that you love to read but are like, I'm not writing that? Let's start with Vanessa on this one.
My all-time favorite trope is marriage of convenience. Because you have the worst, best situation, right? Because once again, they both don't want to get married, but they have these situations that are forcing them to get married. And particularly from the woman's perspective, because I say I do, I lose my name, my property, everything, and I'm really under his power. So I've got to be in some really messed up situation for me to do this. So that whole tension is just so exciting. What I love to read are probably enemies to lovers. You know what I mean? Like real hardcore enemies to lovers, right?
Yeah.
They weren't even friends.
Always hated each other.
Shot my brother kind of thing. You know? Make me like that. That's what I want to see. Yeah. Catnip.
Catnip. All right, Kennedy, how about you? Favorite trope to write, favorite trope to read? They can be the same.
Okay.
Feel free.
I think my favorite trope to write, and I'm such a bad promoter, I noticed everybody holding up their book, and I was like, I hold up my book, okay?
You can do it whenever you want. I will allow it. Yes, beautiful.
It's allowed. Can we move? And I hold it up because it's probably, it combines a couple of things that I love to write. I like second chance. I see a pattern in my writing a lot where there's for some reason they're separated for usually years and then come back together. And I like stories that kind of sprawl. You know, I was Vanessa and I were actually on another panel, just the two of us actually last night. And
we weren't cheating on you, really. We weren't.
We weren't. Just realized I gave this exact same answer last night.
I am hurt.
But I like stories that kind of sprawl, you know, that go like Queen Move starts when they're babies and they're like almost 40 by the end of it. I like stories that cover years and years and where we see the evolution of them as individuals. And then for, you know, it also gets the space to see their growth as characters and how the dynamics between them change over time. So I love that. And it's also single dad, which I have before. And I loved writing single dad with this particular book because so many times in culture, men of color are not portrayed as nurturers. and as great fathers. And I've only written single dad once before, and it was both times it was Black men. And that was important to me because I wanted to show them involved and nurturing. In this book, even in the details where he's like getting his son's vitamins out and he's making sure that he's not eating too many. Right. I loved depicting that. I discursed, but that was just something that was special to me as far as writing a single dad with a few of my books recently. And I love to read enemies to lovers, probably. And I'm thinking about Vanessa, if we're talking historical, one of my favorite enemies to lovers is Lord of Scoundrels. It's like she shoots him. Like straight up. How much more of an enemy can I be than I shot you? So I think I'm with you, Vanessa, that as Lord of Scoundrels by Loretta Chase, if you haven't read it, but I mean, she shoots him. So I think that's one of my favorite things to read.
Talia, how about you? Favorite trope to read, favorite trope to write?
I love to write friends to lovers because I really enjoy like that familiarity when they already know each other and there's such easy banter. And I guess just because I'm lazy, all the work is already done. I just have to
it's a different kind of work. It's still work.
And my favorite to read, that is so tricky, but I really love reading any kind of forced proximity. And I feel like I would include things like Marriage of Convenience under that because it's like a forced social proximity. People are always going to shove you together if you're married. So
that's true.
So yeah, that's up there for me. But I mean, I say that. You said which trope do you like, but you wouldn't write, but I write that all the time. So
I mean, however you want to answer the question. I'm not here to boss you guys around. I'm just here to get it started. We're having a good time. We're having some chats. If that works for you.
Need a boss.
Accept your power and boss us around.
So not my vibe. I just want to hang out and have everybody love me. Like, it's my whole problem. Sarah, how about you? What is your favorite to write, favorite to read? Maybe favorite to read that you don't love to write, depending on how you want to answer the question.
Favorite to read, I'm like a trope fanatic. So I love like all enemies to lovers, second chance, you know, Marriage of Convenience. Give them all to me in the same book. And throw in office romance as well. I mean, it could be all of that. The one that I probably write the most, I think, is Second Chance, because like you said, it's kind of, you don't have to worry about them getting to know each other. It's kind of there. Although I'd have to go through my books because I don't know, I may have more enemies to lovers. Who knows? But those are the kinds I like gravitate to. I would never write a secret baby. And I don't think I have. Again, it's like, once I finish a book, it's like out of my head. So who knows? I may have written one and don't know, but I don't think I've written Secret Baby. I'll read it, but I probably wouldn't write it. But I love all, I'm just, like I said, I cut my teeth on my aunt's Harlequins. That's trope control. So that's
always an aunt with the Harlequins.
It is. You knew what you were getting. You know, you're going to get one of those tropes. So that's what drew me to the genre in the first place. So I love tropes.
Yeah. I also think, you know, especially for me as a woman of color reading y'all's books, it is so satisfying to see women of color in these tropes that I have read and loved by white authors for years and years and years. But to get to like see myself in that space is so thrilling and fascinating. So anytime there's a conversation about like, we're all set with tropes, I'm like, I'm not, because I haven't seen enough of me in the tropes. Like, give me all the tropes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Younger sister and like guy's best friend, that one right there. I want all of those books. Give me the younger sister, guy's best friend.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's a good one.
And I don't see enough of. I'm gonna write one. I love widow books. I love widow books.
Who doesn't love a widow?
Grief is like an aphrodisiac. Once you get, I think that's like the ninth stage. The final stage of grief is like, you know, sex.
I wrote one and it has probably the best sex scenes in it is the one with and she's got like two young girls, you know, widows.
Like, widows know what's up.
I'm telling you, don't sleep on it. You know, Vanessa.
Yes.
Vanessa's just nodding very wisely.
For me, you know, when we look at particularly for the Regency, there's always these young girls, virgins. No, I want somebody who knows a thing.
Yes.
And I don't want her to just take. She widow. She obviously knows bad or good.
Right.
She's at least got one reference point.
You know, the best, Vanessa, is when she was like 18 and she had to marry a man who was like 3 times her age. Then he dies. Now she's ready to love her or something. Those are good. Those are good.
Yeah, Vanessa, I'm gonna need a T-shirt that says, "Can I get somebody who knows a thing?" Because I think that's really incredible marketing. Would love to buy a shirt that says that.
Who knows a thing? I love it.
I would love to talk process with you guys a little bit. Is there, for writing for you, is there a time of day that you like writing the best? Vanessa, are you a night owl, morning person, whenever the mood strikes?
Night owl.
Night owl. Love to see
I
it.
do my best after 10 and I'll go till 4.
Ooh, okay, Kennedy, you're nodding. Seems like you got a fellow night owl over here.
Yeah, I'm definitely a night owl. When I'm close on a deadline, I'm just around the clock. You know, it's like
sure,
whenever I can do it. But when everyone's gone to sleep and no one's asking me to feed them or feed them or, you know, pleasure them, it's like, hey, now I can write. You know, it's like all of my responsibilities are taken and asleep. So now I can write. So mostly
I see your checklist, you know, food, pleasure,
literally, literally, I'm like, what is going to satisfy these people so they can leave me alone and I can write? So I'm mostly a night owl. And it's so funny because I've had so much writer's block lately during COVID. I think
tough time
is burnout, but I also realized that I missed the ritual of leaving my house and writing somewhere else. And that's something that I've missed, and I'm realizing I'm going to have to create some new rituals, create some new spaces for myself that are separate from these walls and these responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. Farrah, how about you? Night owl, morning?
She just got me with the whole not leaving the house. I was a coffee house writer for years. You know, before when I still worked a full-time job, I would leave and write in the morning and then in the afternoon after work at a coffee shop. And I still like to go, even though I write at home now. And I'm a day writer. I pretty much treat it like a 9 to 5.
Nice.
I'm on deadline now, so it's a 9 to 5, and then I work a second shift. And that will be happening until I get this book done and turned in. But I've conditioned myself to work, you know, basically during the day. But I have missed a coffee shop because when I need that, you know, to escape or put myself in just another environment, I would go to the coffee shop, and I always would call it like the magic of it. Because if I was stuck, I would sit there and it would just like go. And it's just because I had this different environment. And I'm sorry, I've tried the coffee shop white noise app, you know, it's not the same.
Not the same.
It's not the same. I'm still sitting here in these gray walls. I need my coffee shop, and it has really affected me. But it's one of those things where we'll have to figure out a way to work through it. I wish I had figured it out already because I probably doing better with my deadline. But yeah, it's normally, you know, the world isn't on fire. I'm working 9 to 5.
Yeah, that makes sense. Talia, how about you?
I could not be like a night owl. I have a sleep disorder. If I don't go to bed on time, I will
respect that.
sick. So kind of, it's a bit, I like Farrah. I would try to treat it as a 9 to 5, but I also get up really late, so it's more like a 12 to 5. But
I mean, if there's one thing we haven't learned in this time, it's time is what you make of it, you know? Who can say if noon is the morning or the afternoon? We don't know anymore. Doesn't matter.
Exactly.
No.
I mean, it's been a bit tricky, obviously, during the quarantine because I never left the house to write. I relied on everyone else leaving the house.
Yes.
Like, being on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never on my own. I would like to blame that for my lack of productivity during this time.
Yes, I keep saying I understand that it is upsetting not to leave the house. I don't mind not leaving my house, but my housemates can't leave my house. And that is really where we're starting to have the problem.
That's a problem.
They're always there. That. I was also wondering, speaking of writing process, what is your favorite writing snack? Like, what's a snack that you're like, ooh, I'm gonna get myself a treat for doing good today? You don't have to sing it, but I just did. How about Vanessa?
Pistachios.
Ooh, thank you for singing it. We love that energy.
Yeah, already shelled and salted.
Oh yeah, you don't need to be doing the work.
That's word.
Yeah. Kennedy, how about you?
You know, usually it's not even so much as something I have to eat, but it's drink. I have a habit of drinking Diet Coke when I'm on deadline. My last book, it was Zaxby's, and it was mostly unsweet tea with just a little bit of sweet, and I just had to have it. I don't know why, but I did.
So it kind of rotates for you.
It rotates, but it's always liquid. It's always something liquid. Yeah.
Gotta keep it hydrated. Farrah, how about you?
Well, it depends on which shift I'm in.
Okay, right. Of course.
First shift, I kind of like have coffee through an IV. Second shift, I have really gotten into dark chocolate and a glass of red wine.
Ooh, classy.
Yeah.
I know. And I actually drink it in a wine glass instead of a plastic cup, so I'm really
Mon Dieu.
Yes. But it has become my night ritual.
Yes, gotta have it to work. Talia, how about you?
Well, I have like a major sugar addiction, but I've started to really worry about my tea. So it used to be biscuits, but now it's hot chocolate because I can drink that like without it touching my teeth, theoretically. We hope.
Sure, I'll let you have it. Yeah. That seems fair.
I am loving like dark hot chocolate with little marshmallows.
Ooh, that's like a classic beauty. I'm just keeping an eye on the time because we do want to get to our listeners' questions because we've got some fun ones in here. But my last question dovetails with one of the first listener questions, and it is, what are you reading at this moment? Can you read right now? Like, how's that going? Let's start with Kennedy.
I was just telling them I just finished, most of what I read is audiobooks. Usually I'm reading through audio, and during COVID, that's kind of all I've been able to do. But I just finished an excellent actual book, The Legal Affair by Nisha Sharma, which I highly recommend. It's a boss babe, cyber tech heroine, and supercharged mogul alpha hero who is completely respectful, and she's an alpha heroine, and I love that alpha heroine, alpha hero dynamic. I love the equity of that, like two titans clashing.
Yes, titans.
I like the clash of titans. And I was just telling them there's an audiobook that I haven't been able to stop listening to. It's more women's fiction. I like your description. What did you call it, Farrah? Romantic fiction. Romantic women's fiction. I think this is more women's romantic fiction. It's a little heavier on the women's fiction. That's called Emmy Blue. And it's excellent. I at least should call the author's name Leah Lois, Emmy Blue, Dear Emmy Blue. It's really good audio.
That sounds lovely. Vanessa, how about you?
Split brain. So we've got Britt Bennett's The Vanishing Half, and I am rereading Daring and the Duke by Sarah MacLean. The first time I scarfed it up.
Yep.
Just because I wanted to know. And now I'm going back and kind of looking at, well, wait a minute. How did she take Mr. Evil and make him Mr. Sexy? I want to know this. I want to know the magic of this.
You redeemed him. She totally redeemed him.
I know. I was rooting for him, but I was like, ooh, he's so evil. He's so evil.
That's the magic of writing, baby.
Yes.
Farrah, how about you? What are you reading?
So I'm the same with audiobooks and regular. Audiobook, I'm going to mess up her name, but it's The Death of Vivek Oje by Way Imzimi. I messed up her name completely, but you'll see, if you saw the cover, you'll see it's like instant New York Times bestseller. It is riveting. You know,
okay.
You see someone, they have that riveting. That's all they say is the book. That's the only word I can come up when I think about this book. It has completely, it's got me by my throat. And the one that I'm reading, the physical book, is One to Watch by Kate Steinman London. I just started it, so I just know I couldn't go to bed last night. So
that's a good sign.
It's totally not good when you're like working. I should be reading. I mean, writing, not reading, but I had to read last night.
Sometimes you just gotta read and you can't help it. Talia, how about you? What are we reading?
I just finished an arc of Truth or Dare by Danielle Allen. Comes out next week on my sister's birthday. Yay! And it was amazing. Like, it's one of those where you really struggle to explain why it was good because you're so busy just like, oh, it's so good. But
that makes sense though.
It was like best friends to lovers, which I love. And it was like they were all at like a friend's destination wedding, and it was a big group of these people who have been friends forever. So there was so much like banter and warmth, and obviously none of us can actually see our friends right now. So I was living through the main characters and they were just doing all the things I love, like being really cute together and sneaking around a hotel and like accidentally falling in love. And yeah, it was great. 10 out of 10.
That sounds wonderful. All right, we're going to move into some other questions from the Q&A. This one is from Christina Williams. What's up, Christina? Same name, respect. How do you keep inspiration for 400 pages? I've been writing and I find that I'm running out of gas as I get to the end. That is a tough one, and I think it's a pretty classic one for anybody who's trying to write a book. Let's start with Farrah. How do you keep that inspiration chugging along day after day?
You know, I'm a big plotter.
Okay.
And I plot my book from, I know exactly what's going to happen before I ever start actually writing the book. So I just make sure that I have as much character motivation as possible and that I have plotted it. Now, it doesn't work for a person who writes by the seat of their pants. But for me, it's, plotting the book and making sure I have enough story for 400 pages. And it's not easy because, for years I wrote for Harlequin, which was only about 220 pages for those books. So I was kind of intimidated when I started the Boyfriend Project because I knew it had to be one of those, 90,000 word books.
Right.
And I still do this. I haven't done this in 10 years, but I loved having the space to be able, I embrace that, being able to really flesh out the characters and have subplots and such. So I would say, if you're a plotter, making sure you plot it out and just give yourself enough story to sustain 400 pages.
Yeah, Kennedy, how about you? How do you keep that trucking?
I'm not a pantser at all, but I'm not a plotter. I'm like a plotster, a hybrid of some sort. I interview a lot, and because of Zoom, I've started to record my interviews. Like a lot of times I'm writing something that's complex, but that I might not be super familiar with. Like with my last one, it was a Native American heroine who was leading pipeline protests and things like that. And so I was interviewing a lot of people who had been in those environments. And I go back to the interviews, I watch the interviews. I'm really inspired by writing. There's an immediacy to a lot of what I write, meaning I'm really inspired by what's going on in the world, whether it's like the pipeline protest or a book that I wrote when I don't know if you guys remember when the football player knocked his girlfriend out in the elevator and it went viral. I immediately that night started outlining a book. It's like there's immediacy, there's a cause and an effect.
A clear reaction happening.
Yeah. And so it's a combination of feeling compelled about it, and I have to feel compelled. I have to feel like this is something I have to say something about it. It's a combination of that and planning. I don't plot, but I do outline. But usually it's the interviews that fuel the plot. I don't even know a lot of what I'm going to write about until I talk to people who have lived stories like this. So that's a big fuel for me, is just making sure I understand the character and then building it out that way.
Yeah. Talia, how about you?
For me, usually the end of the book is actually the easiest for me to write, because it takes me quite a while at the start to really get to know my characters and to have like a solid grasp of them. But once I've done that, I just really want to see them get their HEA. So I start like rushing to the end. So if I do start like slowing down or feeling like I'm lost or even a bit bored, then that's when I know that I've probably messed up somewhere earlier. And I've either like gone too safe and kind of bored myself, or I've taken a turn that maybe isn't true to the characters, and that's why it's not like coming to me. So in those situations, I'll usually like read it all back and see at which point do I kind of lose the magic, or at what point do I think, oh, it happened this way, but actually maybe it would be more interesting this way. So, I mean, that's quite tricky though, because you've done all this work and then you realize, oh, I guess I need to do that again. So it's not the best, but for me,
part of
it's
the process, you know?
Exactly. It's what I have to tell myself.
That is absolutely it. Vanessa, how about you?
I'm a firm plantster, which
okay.
means I am going to, I look at the book as actually 4 phases. So there is beginning, middle, climax, end. And often if you have a saggy middle, you've missed that moment, the climax, which is, some people call it a black moment. Some people call it that moment of change, but I'm working towards that. Another thing is the lie. Like, you know, everybody hears goal, motivation, conflict, emotional set. To me, there is a lie that every one of my characters have been told, and that's the lens at which they are looking at things. And how that lie changes and ultimately is healed by the end of the book.
Right.
That keeps the tension tight and it keeps you moving and the connection is there.
Oh, we love that. This question from Josephine, and this is, I think, in honor of Romance Day. Let's talk about writing sex scenes. Let's get into it, friends. How do you go about it? Is there a place that you draw inspiration from? Let's start with Farrah.
So I'm one of those people, I say all the time, like when I would be at Starbucks, I would be writing like, you know, this extremely dirty stuff. And there's the mom with her kid, you know, doing a mommy thing. And
Yep.
it's like, I don't care. It's part of the book. And sometimes I would be writing and I look up and there's the retirees. I'm like, damn, maybe I shouldn't be writing this here. This is part of the book. And, you know, and I think it's because for me, more than the act, it's about the emotion that comes in it. It's one of the beauties about this genre as a whole is that you can have on the page and you can have off the page that can be just as emotional. And, you know, so even though mine are on the page, I think it's always just more about the emotion that the scene evokes. And I can truly write it anywhere. For me, it's just another part. It has truly happened to me where I've looked up and, you know, seen like an 80-year-old getting his coffee and I'm writing an oral scene. And I'm like, this is not right, Farrah. You should wait until you're home. No. But yeah, it's a part of the job.
Part of the job. Absolutely. Kennedy, how about you?
It's so funny because I hope my husband's not watching. Like, people will ask my husband, so, you know, your wife writes romance. And he's like,
sure.
That's awkward. But I don't mind writing sex scenes. And I do feel a lot like Farrah was saying, I always like for them to advance the plot and to advance the emotional connection and to advance the relationship in some way. Sometimes I will like go to YouTube and Google like best kisses, you know, or hottest scenes from your top hottest scenes from the movies. And sometimes I just need to see it in motion. Like I just need to see somebody really hot for somebody else, like really going for it. And then I'm like, it kind of greases the wheels and I'm like, okay, now I'm ready, you know? So, you know, sometimes that does happen, but I have friends who leave the sex scenes for last. I write very linearly. I don't jump around as much. So I just plow right through them as I get to them.
Yeah, plow right through them to say, for a phrase.
Not a pun intended. That was pretty quick.
Well, sometimes it happens.
It's happening. It's happening.
Talia, how about you? How do you approach writing those sex scenes?
I feel like sometimes the tension between the characters kind of drags you off into the sex scene, and it all works out very nicely, and those are like my favorite times. But then other times, just very aware that I'm writing people banging, and I feel very weird about that.
Well, that's true. That's part of it.
So like those times when I'm feeling like more, not weird about it, but just like weirdly conscious of the mechanics of it. Those are the times when instead of writing the scene, I'll think, okay, why are they doing this? Once they're done, how do they feel about having done it? And I'll leave it at that. And then I'll wait until like a later point when sometimes it's like a song I hear that makes me think, oh, this is like the vibe for this scene. And then all of a sudden I can write it. Or sometimes it's like something I see, like Kennedy mentioned, like best kisses and stuff. You might watch or read something and feel emotionally inspired, and then suddenly I can write it. So I think it just depends on what's going on around me. And
yeah, absolutely. Vanessa, how about you?
Well, I am a closed door writer. But when I go back and I look, I'm actually a crack door writer.
Yes, you are.
I'm a crack door writer because
I wasn't going to argue with you. They're your books, but
they're
very hot.
Because I like Farrah said, I am all about the emotions, and that act is so important. And I give it up to everyone on the panel here. All y'all just go. You just make a decision, I think, to me, it's also, there's this privacy. And by the point that they're ready, I know them, they're like my friends. And I'm like, I can't watch y'all do it. I'm like, I listen. I
can't evade their privacy.
So it's my characters, and I'm one of those. So my characters, they'll fuss with me like, what? So by the point that emotional commitment is there, I can't watch it. And so, but I'm going to give you all of the emotions, and you're going to feel it, so to speak.
Absolutely. We've got a couple of questions from folks about writing during, our time of COVID. And if we can see yourself writing a novel set in this time, or if you think maybe just for now, maybe it's something you can revisit later. But is there a way that you think you could approach, maybe in the future, writing a COVID-19 novel? Maybe a novel that takes place entirely on Zoom? Who can say? Farrah, let's start with you.
Well, I'm lucky with this series in that it's like over a 6-month period, so I don't have to address COVID. But I actually had this conversation with some friends that we meet every Monday night over Zoom now. And we think that it will probably show up in the same way that like Hurricane Katrina because we're talking about that.
Sure.
Writers, or like 9/11 shows up. It's like the trauma of it. Maybe later I can see maybe including something like that, but I'm not for the he took her mask off and type thing. I don't see that happening in my books. I'm not going there.
Fair enough. How about you, Kennedy?
It's so interesting because I was listening to an interview with Issa Rae, who does Insecure, a few days ago, and she was talking about acknowledging it but not making it central. Like on you might start seeing people, I'm not saying you have to do this, Issa, this is what I heard you say in the interview, but that you might start seeing in the background people wearing masks, and some of the things that have crept into how we function as a society for the possible foreseeable future, like making a nod to that, but not making it central, and not making it what the story's about. I think that's where I fall right now.
Yeah.
I'm working on a proposal now where there is some grieving. And I was saying the other day, I feel like that we as a nation, as a world, but especially America, because we've lost so many, there's so many people who are it just makes me look at what I'm writing about grief, even through a deeper, different, I mean, always there's a carefulness and a thoughtfulness about it, but there's just, it's like massive grief in our nation right now, and some of it's not being acknowledged, or we're not given a place to process some
that.
Yeah, so I think some of that mentality will creep into how I write about grief. But I don't see myself making COVID like the part of the point or central to the narrative.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, Talia, how about you?
It's something that I've really been struggling with, especially as like I plan my next books and I write in the present time. So I'm gonna have to write a book during this time, like this, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? Because, you know, usually you write about something and either it's affected you, so you're confident that, you know, your viewpoint on it is valid, even if it's not the only experience, or it's happened to someone else and you can kind of look into that and do your best. But this is something that has happened to everyone, and because it's happened to everyone, it's happened in so many different ways.
Yeah.
So it's like, I am still asking myself this question.
I think that's totally fair. Vanessa, have you answered this question, or are you still asking it? Or are you saying, I don't really have to answer it?
I can answer it real easily.
Yeah.
No, I'm not addressing it because I write.
No, you don't have to.
But in that vein, I turned in an Earl the Girl and a Toddler last November, and I got the book back. And what has happened since then? We've had the Black Lives Matter movement. We've had George Floyd. And so I rewrote the book because present day events really do center you. Yeah. And so one of the reasons is the Earl is a blackamoor. And so you're going to get more of his, let's just say that it is my homage to Black men. And I think it is something that hopefully will be encouraging, and it'll be something different that people haven't seen.
I love that. I'm just keeping an eye on the time. We have exactly 6 minutes left, and I think we can get one more question in there. And I have this question from Danielle, which I love, which is, what is a piece of advice you have for aspiring romance authors? Let's start with Farrah.
I always say, make sure that you protect your voice, your writing voice.
Because
it is the one thing that is all you. You can write all those different tropes. You know, we talked about that. The thing that makes it yours and makes it special is your writing voice. So find that, hone that, and don't let anyone mess with that.
That is great advice. I love it. Kennedy, how about you?
Kind of a two-parter, a fast two-parter.
We'll allow it.
First part is not to take craft for granted. Especially, I do a lot of self-publishing, and there are a lot of people who just like, oh, we can do this. I'm just going to write a book. I had been in journalism for 20 years before I started writing fiction, and I didn't take for granted that I could write fiction just because I've been doing that. Do you know what I mean? It was something that I worked on to respect craft, to respect this as something that, you know, is serious, even, you know, if it's light, even if it's funny or whatever, but someone's investing their money in it, and just to make sure that you can tell a great story. And then the more personal one is, this can be a really lonely, you know, it comes down to you and this keyboard, you and this story, and just to make sure that you have a tribe, you know, make sure that you surround yourself with a group of writers who will hold you accountable and who will also encourage you. And that, you know, you just have people who are there for you.
I love that. Talia, how about you? What's one piece of advice?
I would say, and it's kind of a bit like what Farrah said, but I feel like you really have to wallow in your id, and what you write should be like a pleasure to you, and it should feel like the most authentic you. So like, read what you love and then write what you love shamelessly and without restraining yourself or trying to rein it in. Just get it all out there, because that's what's going to make this like a career that you are always going to love and are going to continue to do forever, because you're really going to be having the time of your life.
Ooh, what a great answer. Thank you for the fist pump also. Vanessa, take us home on that one.
I will, because
Thank you.
The two pieces of advice that I've been given was one by Beverly Jenkins. She told me to slow down and tell your story. No one else can tell your story.
Ooh, that's good.
The other one is by Kristen Higgins, and Write Scared. Don't be safe when you write.
Ooh.
Write the story of your heart every single time.
Oh, I think that is a beautiful way to end. We technically have 3 minutes left, but I would prefer to end on the side of caution because I know these Zoom events can run a little long because everyone's like, you're at your house, these can run long. No, I want to respect everyone's time. These can't end. They must end at some point. But I do want to thank all of you, Farrah, Vanessa, Kennedy, and Talia, for joining us today. This was a delight. This was a lovely way to spend a Saturday afternoon. So thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you so
Christina.
Of
I just want to
course.
thank all our wonderful panelists, Talia, Vanessa, Farrah, Kennedy, for this incredible conversation. And thank you to everyone watching for spending your Saturday afternoon with us. Please learn more about these fantastic books and purchase The Boyfriend Project, Queen Move, Take a Hint, Danny Brown, Duke, The Lady and the Baby, and the rest of our brilliant speakers' work on harvard.com. So on behalf of Harvard Bookstore here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, have a great weekend, keep reading, keep it romantic, and stay safe. Thanks so much, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.